What would your best life look like? If you could perform at your best every single day, what kind of goals would you achieve? What holds us back from this is our behavior and our habits. But by the end of this video, you'll understand how habits work, and you'll also be able to change them so that you can perform at your best every single day. When I started in college, I was getting bad grades, staying up super late, and constantly stressed out. But after understanding the concepts in this video, I started living a stress-free life, and I 10x my productivity while also living more meaningfully. Hey, my name is Michael Thompson, and I'm a youth pastor and a student, and I'm working on my PhD. I'm in the first year of that program, and it's in the New Testament. And on this channel, we discuss personal and professional development from a Christian perspective. Today, we're going to talk about behavior change, and I want to start by telling a story about a lady named Lisa. Lisa started drinking when she was 16 years old, and she also struggled with overeating. She was $10,000 in debt at one point in her 20s, and her longest job lasted less than a year. She changed so much that a group of researchers wanted to know, how did she do it? And the day that the researchers talked to Lisa, they saw a lean and vibrant woman with toned legs of a runner, and she looked 10 years younger than the photos from just a few years ago. She had no outstanding debt, and she didn't drink, and she was 3 years into a job at a graphic design firm. She now runs marathons and has lost 60 pounds from just a few years ago. How did she do it? It all started when she hit rock bottom in life. She went through a really hard time, but instead of allowing her life circumstances to get the best of her, she set a goal. And while she was on vacation in Cairo, Egypt, she decided that she would come back to Egypt in a little while and she would do a trek through the desert. Now, this was a huge goal, and to accomplish this goal, she would have to quit smoking. And that one decision to quit smoking would lead Lisa on a journey to overcome her weight, her drinking, and her spending habits. And she did this because she understood 3 principles of behavior change. What are these principles? Well, the first one is to understand the habit loop. The habit loop has 3 different steps. The first step is the cue. And the cue is just a trigger that tells your brain that it's supposed to go into automatic mode and the habit is to begin. The second step is the routine, and that's when the behavior or action is taken in response to the cue. And the third step is the reward. This is a positive reinforcement that follows the routine. For example, what do you do when you wake up in the morning? Well, you probably check your phone. And for an example here, the cue was that you woke up, and then you wonder, what are people up to, or what time is it? So then the routine is that you grab your phone off of the side, and you look at it, you say, okay, what's going on Facebook and Instagram? And the reward is that feeling that you got once you checked up on what other people were doing. Cue, routine, reward. This also happens when you brush your teeth. You're about to go to bed, or when you wake up, you want that clean mint flavor. So that desire moves you to the routine, which is where you actually brush your teeth. And then after you brush your teeth, you feel that minty flavor and you feel satisfied. So understanding this habit loop, cue, routine, reward, leads us to understand cravings. Cravings is a second thing that you need to understand if you're going to change your behavior. And these cravings, they play a critical role in habit formation. As a case study, we'll go back to the toothpaste example. When you have a craving, there's a neurological pattern, pattern in your brain that helps individuals engage in certain behaviors. So when we anticipate a reward, our brain releases dopamine. It's a chemical associated with anticipating pleasure. And then this dopamine release, it reinforces the habit, making us want to repeat that behavior again in the future. So when you recognize what you crave, that satisfaction, fulfillment, then you can lead a healthier lifestyle because you can stack those different factors to lead to the kind of behavior change that you actually want. Think about this in a negative way though. When you want something sweet after a meal, you might crave chocolate. Chocolate is not exactly the most healthy thing, although I love chocolate. Instead of having chocolate, you can choose another sweet reinforcement like fruit. Okay, that's something that my wife always does. She says, no, we're not gonna have chocolate, we're gonna have fruit instead. Instead of having a negative, satisfying action that completes that habit, you have a positive one. So you still get something sweet, but you substitute it, and what you're doing is you're satisfying the craving in a positive way. You know, another example is when you pair things that you don't want to do with things that you know that you should. So if you know that you have to study but you really don't want to, you can add caffeine, and whenever you have that dopamine reinforcing craving, you're more likely to study. Another thing that some people do is they'll watch a TV show while they're on the treadmill. They really don't want to go on the treadmill and they really want to watch a TV show. So you just pair them together, and it makes you satisfy this craving in a right way, and it's more beneficial. One more real life example of satisfying your craving in a positive way is President Ronald Reagan. Now, he was known for being the jelly bean president. He had jelly beans all over the White House, and it was because he had a problem with smoking. So instead of continuing his habit of smoking, he got cinnamon flavored jelly beans and put them all around the White House. So you'd always see him snacking on jelly beans, but what he was doing was instead of satisfying that craving in a negative way, he was doing it in a positive way, a harmless Jelly Belly brand versus smoking those cigarettes. So you have to understand the routine. When you understand the habit loop and you understand the craving, now you can understand the third part of this behavior change, which is the golden rule. Here's what the golden rule says. You can't extinguish a bad habit, you can only change it. Instead of trying to eliminate a habit completely, replace that existing routine with a much better one while keeping the same cue and reward. This is when you satisfy a craving in a way that, as I mentioned earlier, improves your life instead of harms it. When you crave something sweet after dinner, we said you can have fruit instead of chocolate. That's one way to do this. Another example is if you crave social interaction, get involved with a local church instead of going to a club, because you have that desire to be around people for a reason because God made you that way. And if you satisfy that in a negative way, like going to a club, getting super involved in alcohol, all these different bad habits will lead you down a much different path rather than satisfying that God-given craving in the way that God intended us to, which is being with a group of believers who love Him and want to serve Him. But you also have to understand willpower if you're gonna know this third step, which is the golden rule of habit change. And willpower is like a muscle. It can be strengthened with practice, but it can also become fatigued. There was a study done involving participants who had to resist eating cookies in favor of healthier snacks. Those who exercised their willpower in one area, like resisting the cookies, had less willpower available for subsequent tasks, like solving difficult puzzles. The principle that this teaches us is that you need to be strategic when you plan to change your behavior. Because if you try to do too many things at once, you're not gonna have very much willpower left. Remember, that's like a muscle. So if you are trying to change 8 areas of your life all at once, when you get done changing the first area, then you're not gonna have energy for the second one. So make sure that you don't try to do too many things in your life that are too difficult, because willpower is a muscle. Once you get stronger and you fix that first area of your life, then you move to the second one rather than trying to do all these things at the same time. So guys, this information, it was taken from the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. So if you want to read up more, that's a great book. But remember, you have to understand the habit loop, understand cravings, and understand the golden rule of behavior change to design your ideal life. Remember not to change too many things at once or you get discouraged. And I hope that you will use this information to transform your life. We'll see you all in the next one.